Hello everybody, this is AK. I'm back. So recently someone told me that he should have sold all his investments in REITs when the unit prices chong so high. Yeah, they went on a tear, and this was a few months ago, right, when they went on the tear because the US Fed cut interest rates by 50 basis points and indicated that they could cut interest rates by another 2% or more by the end of 2025. Right, so because of that, unit prices in REITs went up a lot, and in some cases by 20 or 30%. And people thought that we are going to see sunny days for REITs again. Well, to be fair, I don't think the days were ever gloomy for REITs. I mean, they were still paying out income, right? Distributable income. They were still distributing income to shareholders, right? And it's not as if they were going bankrupt or they were going under. Well, with the exception of Manulife US REIT, which was in a lot of trouble, and they're still trying to dig themselves out of the hole. And of course, I made videos about that before. The thing is, this viewer or reader said, he should have sold all his investments in REITs back then and bought into the banks. And of course, that is also a bit of hindsight, since the banks delivered such fantastic results. And imagine if we have sold something at a high and bought something that was fairly priced, and then there's something that was at a high, saw a drop in price, and the fairly priced item shot up in price. Of course, that would be a perfect scenario, right? But like I say, it's hindsight, right? Don't feel remorseful, right? Buyer remorse, seller remorse. In this case, really is a double whammy, because he didn't sell something that was at a high, and he didn't buy something that was fairly priced. So it was a double remorse kind of thing. So I can understand that feeling. But like I say, hindsight, right? So just learn from this, and don't brood over it. It's unhealthy. And yesterday someone told me, he should have sold all his shares in Alibaba when the share price spiked to almost $120 per share after China announced their stimulus, right? And then now it has died. The entire euphoria has died down, and the stimulus has become a whimper, right? Alibaba shares dropped below $100 again, or I think it dropped below $90 again. It's probably like 80 something dollars now, which was where it was for a long time. At some point it went below $80. So he said he should have sold all his Alibaba shares when it went up to almost $120 and used the money to invest in OCBC instead. Well, that again is hindsight, right? So but if you're into technical analysis, then you look at Alibaba's share price right after the announcement of the stimulus, which turned out not to be very stimulating. The price went parabolic, right? So it went up in a straight line, almost a straight line. And whenever you see a parabolic action like this, usually that kind of amazing explosion in share price movement usually is not sustainable. Usually you see a pullback, but in this case it's not just a pullback, it actually plunged back down, all the way down. It's quite dramatic, right? So the thing is, there's a lesson to be learned from all this. In the case of the REITs and the banks, in the first case, where the reader say he should have sold all his investment in REITs and bought the banks instead. Like I always say, right, if we are looking at prices alone, it's not investing. I mean, borrowing from Mr. Warren Buffett, right? I kept saying that investing in the banks makes a lot more sense, even to today, because of valuation and because of how they actually reward shareholders. They pay 50 to 60% of their earnings as dividends, and how they have a strong balance sheet. And even if another pandemic should hit, or even if there should be a recession, the banks would still chug along pretty well, right? Whereas with the REITs, they probably would have some pressure, right? Especially if interest rates were to stay higher for longer, right? So the lesson is, don't focus on price, and don't speculate on news, right? The news come out, they say, oh, interest rates are going to get reduced by how much, and that's the timeline, huh? And then people speculate that therefore the REITs should do better. Just go drill into the numbers, the valuation, and that's why I keep saying that my focus is on valuation these days. I want to be more of an investor than a speculator, and I want to invest in something that's as resilient. For example, in DBS, OCBC and UOB, our banks is resilient, rather than to invest something that is like the REITs, unless of course, like I said, the REITs become more rewarding, right? All investments are good investments at the right price, right? So if the distribution yield for the REITs should be a lot higher, then it compensates me better for investing in them, then I'll possibly buy more, right? But at the moment, even now, I still think that banks make better investments for income as well as for growth. Like I say, the REITs, if they want to grow, they have to go around asking for more money, private placement or rights issue, right? And another catalyst for this video is something that's in the news, right? And Jerome Powell has just said recently that the Fed was in no rush to cut rates, right? And Powell pointed out that the strong US economic growth will allow the Fed to take their time in deciding how far and how fast they should lower interest rates. So this is a departure from what they said before, and how they could see interest rates lower by end of 2025 by 200 basis points, right? So now they seem to have backtracked a little, right? And this is good news for the banks. Obviously, this is good news for the banks, because higher for longer interest rates is good news for the banks, right? Net interest income is going to stay higher for longer as well. And of course, Donald Trump winning the White House is possibly also good news for the banks, because the Republicans are usually less about regulating the banking industry. So the banks might be able to do a lot more. I mean, that's in the US, but there could be some trickle effect, right, for banks elsewhere in the world. And well, all things taken into consideration, DBS, OCBC and UOB should continue to do well in 2025, right? Especially when after third quarter 2024, the results, we saw that how their other sources of income have picked up very strongly, right? Especially when it comes to wealth management, the fees that they collect, right, is doing very well. So I have no issues with my investment portfolio and holding on to my investments in the banks. And if there should be a pullback for some reason, all else being equal, I'll probably be buying more. As for REITs, well, my stance is quite clear. And as for Alibaba, well, like I said, it looks cheap, right? I've said before, it looks cheap. From a valuation perspective, it does look cheap. It's just that there's so much policy risk in China, and of course, China's economy is not in a good place right now. It's pretty soft. But I think it looks cheap. If we want to buy based on the fact that it looks cheap, right, I don't think it's such a terrible thing to do. It's just that we have to be aware that it could be a long wait, like Mr. Piyush Gupta said before. The Chinese economy could take 4 or 5 years before it recovers, and while we are waiting, then in the meantime we get paid something like 1% dividend yield, which really isn't that attractive to me, right? I think Alibaba could actually make itself more attractive to investors if it were to pay out higher dividends, which I think it is capable of doing since it's able to do so much in terms of share buybacks, right? So if they pay out dividends a lot more and then bring the dividend yield to 3-4%, I think that would change things for the share price, right? But I'm not going there. That's not my area of expertise. Just to update an update regarding Evening with AK and Friends 2025. I've heard from Kenji, my friend who's helping to organize the event, that currently 50% of the tickets have been sold. If you're interested, I'm leaving a link in the description box below to the ticketing site. So have a look if you're interested. But make sure you are free in the evening of the 15th of January, right, before buying a ticket, right? Still quite some time away, so I guess there's no hurry to buy a ticket. Once you're quite sure you're able to make it, then get yourself a ticket, right? So that's all. If AK can talk to himself, so can you. Bye bye.